So let's convene the Water Supply Planning Committee of August 3rd of the Water District, today at 4 o'clock. We're all three here. I don't need a roll call because it's obvious. There's three committee members here. Are there any members of the audience, just to have an idea of what's in the audience?
I'm looking.
Yes, I have 4 persons
4?
in the audience, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now I have 5. Now I have 5.
Okay, well, okay.
One of them is one of our board members.
It's
Okay.
2 of them are Cal-Am, and one is an unidentified caller. So,
Well, we'll see when we get there. So the meeting's been called to order, so let's just go out to the public for any comments on any subject, because there are no subjects mentioned on our agenda.
all right, no hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay. Back to our action item. We have one, the adoption of the minutes of the July 6th meeting. Any comments on that or motions?
Chair, I have a comment. It's under the notation of committee members present. It says George Riley, Molly Evans, and Alvin Edwards. But then in the actual text of the minutes, it talks about a unanimous vote of 3-0 by Adams, Evans, and Riley. And so I believe that Mary Adams was in attendance, not Alvin Edwards.
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, Mary was.
And I believe that too.
So,
So a motion.
I was going to make a motion to accept the minutes as amended to reflect the committee members attending.
Thank you, and I will second that.
Thanks. A motion and a second. Have a roll call, please.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Evans,
Aye.
and Director Riley.
Aye. So that's the action item.
Unanimous.
Next is the discussion items. It's pretty much everything. I have a couple questions that may fit these categories too. So, okay, let's start. So, General Manager, can you get us started?
Yeah, well, this one has been on the long-term strategic planning list for a number of years, and finally this year, due to a couple of reasons, due to the closure of the licensing period or the water rights period being the end of 2020, we knew we had to work on it. And then we received a letter from the State Water Board that they were trying to clear their desks as well. And they had a stack of petitions going back quite some years. And so it became ripe to address it. We went to the board and received permission to write a letter back to the state, which we did, which is included as first exhibit. And then John and Thomas and others have kind of been noodling for quite some time as to the long-term strategy for that. And then there's been a little bit of communication in the last week. John sent an email saying, hey, it's August, December's right around the corner. So I don't know if, John, you're prepared to talk about anything, but basically the technical memorandum outlines the district's collective thinking on what to do with the water rights. And we're awaiting kind of state recognition that we're going to get the process started, and deadlines will be extended into whenever we're ready. And they've indicated that that would be the case, but then they've gone kind of quiet on us. John, do you have anything to add there?
That summarizes where we're at.
Yeah, so if you have any questions from your read of either of the exhibits, we can address those.
Well, let's have a little discussion around it. I've got some questions about the information, but I'll ask other committee members if they want to start the discussion. Let me just go on a little bit.
I was gonna say, it may take me a minute to find my questions, so I would suggest you go first.
Okay, thank you. It looks like, Dave, that the State Water Board outlined the procedure to follow, and we're following their lead on this. So we've touched all the i's and t's on this process. Is that your you believe we have?
Yeah, I don't think that we've done the submittal that satisfies some of the, so if you look at the technical memorandum, the plan of action, this is basically what our plan is, to submit petitions for the B, which is the remainder piece, and then begin the licensing process for A and C. And those will be kind of two separate efforts. The use of the B is going to be based on, I don't want to call it fiction. I mean, it's a plan. It'll be based on projects. It'll be based on theoretical maximum injection. I'm sorry, the A and C will be based on theoretical maximum injection. So there's work to do in both cases to make the case for moving forward. So what we're trying to do with B is to say we have future projects in mind that could conceivably use some of this water rights, so don't rescind it at this time. And there's some ideas that have been put in this memo. The licensing, they would tend to look back to the highest volume that you've utilized to date. And John is going to build the case probably based on the modeling that there's a theoretical maximum that we're very likely capable of achieving. So therefore, don't ratchet us down to just what you've seen in the historical. And I don't know, John, if you can speak to that at all, but so these are kind of two separate exercises. The licensing is we've proven that we're using it. And so think of it as a used and useful water right. And so now it's time to move from a water right to a license, because that'll make it permanent. The remainder piece, the B piece, even the way the B right is written, it's still conceptually the old new Los Padres Dam. And there's things in there that don't seasonally limit it and so forth. So they would either rescind the remainder unless we come to them and say, wait, we will have actual use for it. And here's our preliminary look. And that will give them the ability to say, okay, we're going to extend the time for you to respond and make a petition to get a portion of that water right set aside for your future projects. And then they will very likely look at rescinding the other remainder that we don't have any ideas or projects surrounding its use. So that's kind of what the technical memorandum goes into. John listed several concepts, Tullarcitos off-channel storage. We've talked about that before. Tullarcitos ASR. So, these are the things that will hopefully allow us to get the permit time extension. But with that, we've got to get the guys at the state to at least be responsive enough to say, yes, we're going to accept your plan. Here's the timelines and so forth.
Is it the three B and then A and C, but the three of them together, do they suggest that we will overdraft the river? I mean, would all three be at play at the same time?
Well, yeah, conceivably, sure. I mean, right now, A and C are both in play at the same time. They have slightly different requirements. So when we're in the middle of the ASR season, sometimes we're diverting under A and sometimes we're diverting under C. If you expand ASR, so a new piece of B would come off and probably be given a new letter, or we could clean them all up and combine them if we could get the same permit requirements. But yeah, they could all be used at the same time. There is a component of the permit that's a direct diversion, which is very unlikely to ever be utilized. The rest of it is diversion to storage. So you'd absolutely be time limited to the same months. If we were going, let's say, up to Tullarcitos for ASR up there, your season of diversion is very likely to be exactly the same as your ASR for Seaside. season of diversion. So yeah, you'd be doing them at the same time, but because of this finding that the Carmel River is over appropriated during the summer months, you're going to be restricted to those months, and there will be in-stream flow requirements. And so it'll all be deemed to be water that's kind of surplus to the needs of the river, which means only in, under certain conditions would the permits kick in. And keep in mind, these permits are also subordinate to Cal-Am's permits on the Carmel River, and also, I guess, technically to the Table 13 water rights, although very few of those have been perfected. But yeah, basically it was going to be use it or lose it. So we've invented some uses that, we'll try to flesh out here over the next year and a half.
And just to finish that thought from my standpoint, the winter runoff restrictions all relate to steelhead survival and a flow volume, and all that's in play right now. Was that in play before the CDO? Did that come in play with the CDO? What's the relationship of that restriction to the CDO?
Yeah, so I would say, and John, you can step in, I think it was a water right decision in 1998 that made a determination that the river was over appropriated. And so from that point going forward, the listing of the steelhead happened right around the same time, 97, 98. And so the seasonality, the season of use became more of an element at that time. It was not part of it in 95. So in Order 9510 was written, there was no discussion of that. Although there was obviously discussion about environmental degradation and overpumping, because that's what led to it in the first place.
So back up again, the answer to the question is there a relationship to the CDO? It's a separate issue. It's
a separate issue. Yeah. I mean, the relationship is we need that water for ASR, and ASR is an offset to the effective diversion limit up to 600 acre feet per year. So how we use that water does have a relationship to the CDO. And if we had another project that this water could go to, say, for example, if we had actually built off main stem storage, at one point, the consultant Shibatani said, "Oh, Pine Creek, it's a very high-walled box canyon. You put storage in there." At one point, we looked at basically the canyon that became the main road for Tehama would have been, and actually where the Segunda tanks are up in Tehama, would have been off-site storage that was looked at by the district and environmental work done. So if you had either of those, that's what we would have filled those with, this water right, and that would have been sufficient to get rid of the CDO. So yeah, there's a relationship. If we had projects that produced more water, saved more water, and remember, we're only about 800 acre feet away from being within legal rights and satisfying the demand of the peninsula. So that answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, if we built New Los Padres Dam if we voted yes in 95 with this water right, that would have allowed Cal-Am to legalize its diversions up to a higher level, and there would never have been the 2009 CDO. That would have been the satisfying Order 9510 right there. But didn't happen.
And it was the storage argument that existed at the time. It still exists as an option,
Right.
but okay, that's not in our immediate plans. Okay, my curiosity on that point still is pretty high, so I'll stay tuned. Other committee members?
Director Riley, this is John Lear. The only thing I would add to what Dave said was you asked where and those were put on the water rights during protest on the process during the application for the water right. That was
You went mute for, I mean, yeah, you were muted for a period of that comment. Could you start over, please?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. The fish restrictions were entered into as a protest process when the water rights were applied for. So it was a negotiation of the season of diversion and the flows at the different spots in the river.
Okay,
So when the water rights were issued. And I guess to go to this connection to the CDO, there was a point in time, right around 2011 where people were saying, well, why can't you just expand ASR and satisfy the need? Why do we need to look at desal? And that's where some of the discussion turned to, well, right now the current system works and can accommodate this much ASR, but if we go bigger, then we're going to need more extraction well capacity. And if we go as big as we need to go, we might have to expand the Begonia iron removal facility. And so the cost structure became, oh, it's not just injection and extraction wells up in the Seaside Basin. It was all this other infrastructure that was going to be needed. And that led enough people to say, oh, well, that makes it less economically viable. And it's the accumulation of a bunch of little parts. Let's go do a big single water supply. And that's kind of how desal as the, as the savior kind of took over.
okay. Well, thanks for that kind of orientation to these issues.
I have a question.
Yes, Mary, please.
So is the idea that we should take whatever steps necessary to secure the maximum potential water rights for each of the permits?
Exactly.
And then
so,
can you tell me if we were going to change? I mean, we had those identified projects that you've come up with. If we needed to change those, to change one of the petitions, can you tell me what sort of costs would be associated with that, other than the staff time to work on it?
I don't know the answer to that. John, do you know the answer to that?
No, I think there are filing fees for, it would be a petition to change beneficial use, Director. And so that you would have to file that if you found another set of projects. So if you identified another portfolio, you would move forward and file a petition to change beneficial use.
But you wouldn't anticipate any kind of litigation or that sort of thing? Anybody challenging us on it?
Anytime you file a petition to change, it does open, I think it's a 30-day comment period that someone can file a protest. At that time, you need to resolve that protest. And so that may be something that would happen.
Historically, the state board has tried to clear their books of unexercised water rights, and there's more and more of a push to do so. But the state board does lag behind in these types of proceedings. But it's important for the district to show that it is exercising due diligence, or it will run the risk of having the state board unilaterally terminate those rights that have not yet been fully exercised. So I think for the district to proceed and show that it is taking the initiative is important for the state board to defeat any claim that we have had lack of due diligence in exercising our right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mary, before you got on the Board of Supervisors, the Salinas River right, which is called 11043, was going to be subject to a revocation hearing by the state. And so the County Water Resources Agency and the county pulled together a plan to say, hey, state, we really are going to be good actors. We have a use for this. Let us keep our water right. And the state relented. In the process, they reduced the right from about 165,000 acre feet a year down to 130 or 135. I think it went from 168 to 135. So they took a little bit of the water right away and said, now show us progress on this plan that you've implemented. And then within a year, the county was off that plan, but there's not been any other attempt at a revocation hearing. So the goal is to avoid complete revocation, to have enough of a plan that will keep the conversation alive and active. But eventually you have to come up with a use or you're going to lose it.
Thank you. Can we go to Molly? You have some questions?
Well, the questions that I had on the projects that are listed, these seem to be the path that we're going down, as we've just heard. Are there any concerns with these projects? Some of them are well outside district boundaries. I see that even in Tularcitos, it's still going into the Seaside Basin. So I guess I'm just wondering if there's any jurisdictional issues with any of these.
Right. Yeah, Tularcitos would not go into the Seaside Basin. It was just mentioned by comparison to the Seaside wells. It is private property, so you'd have to negotiate with the ranchers up there.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I misread that.
Yeah, but it's the same watershed.
What's being proposed, though, is not to mine water from outside the district. The proposal is to store district water outside and then pull it back to the district. So that does not incur the same types of extraterritorial objection that might otherwise arise.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Okay.
And I would add, this is John Lear, that the property where the water is proposed to be diverted is owned already by Cal-Am.
Okay. That's all I had.
Great.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, you need to go out to the public on this item?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, this is all discussion item and everything. We still go out to the public each time? Okay, we will. Public comment is welcome at this time.
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, let's go to discussion on pure water. Well, let me just see. I thought I had another question. And let me just see if I can find it for a couple of seconds. There was, and maybe this applies to several of the options. In the cover memo that went to the state, Mr. Hunt, there's a question about improve or expand the well field in Carmel Valley. This is for extraction, I assume, what we're talking about. And in the general rate, as referenced in the general rate case that is currently under consideration. Can you give me the connection between what is currently before the PUC and what's referenced here?
Yeah, there's an additional extraction well, a new Rancho Cañada well that is in the general rate case that would increase capacity off the river. You know, we're agnostic as to which well pumps. You know, in the winter, when flows are up, you're not really going to radically impact, you know, a localized area of the river by which well you choose. That being said, increased capacity would just be the goal. So you know, you don't have to worry. We've had some capacity constraints when a well's been offline and so forth. So yeah, there's three things in the general rate case that we're a little concerned about that are physical attributes. And so and Dave Laredo can speak more to this, but the administrative law judge suspended our June hearings, evidentiary hearings. And so it's quite likely that the GRC decision will get delayed into the beginning or middle of the next calendar year. Well, there's this well in the Carmel Valley that we'd like to see moving along. There's a pump station near Forest Lake Tanks we'd love to see moved along. There's the rebate program we'd like to see uninterrupted. So there's certain things that affect operations that just we're concerned about. And so that additional well is one of them.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions from the committee, we'll move to the next item. No. Oh, did we go to the public?
No,
I think we did.
there were no hands raised.
Yes, go to the public, please.
No, Mr. Riley, you did go to the public.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is update on Pure Water Monterey. Dave, please.
Yeah, I think this will be brief because I guess Maureen is out today, John, is that correct? Well, so all of the work right now on Pure Water Monterey is finishing the commissioning of the existing well field and going out for bids on a third deep well. So there are 2 well sites that are already pre-approved. Site number 1, which is kind of the north and west, I guess, of the well field area. And site number 4, which is down towards the backflush basin and closer to General Jim Moore. Both of those have the boring driller out there currently. And so the test borings will reveal the geology, which will then inform a decision about both design and efficacy of wells at either location. I think the instincts of the ASR well whisperer, John Lear, is that site number 1 is going to be much more potentially productive. But the boring folks are out there. The packages for what we call swabbing, but basically some conditioning of the internal surface and casing of the well is being pulled together right now. John, can you speak to that? I think you gave her some specs for that. When is that going out?
Yes. Well, it will not go out. It will be through the construction manager, and it will use the driller on contract for this phase of Pure Water Monterey. And we have other contracts for project management that we're pulling together right now. And we think that the chemicals are going to show up on site the 17th of this month.
Right. So that'll be, you can't start without the chemicals. So that'll be the time. And then the Kennedy Jenks engineering team is putting together design of the deep well. And those packages, John, do you have a date for that?
I don't know if there's a solid date for that. I took the commissioning load from Maureen, so I know a lot more about that, and she's the PM for the next well.
Yeah, so I apologize, she's not available today, but basically we're heading down that path. There's been some inconclusive discussion about whether we should look to 4 wells, so 2 additional deep wells. The site number 4 is the one that's not expected to be nearly as efficient as the others because of kind of the anticline of its geology. John, step in as soon as I get terms wrong. But so when we get the borings analyzed, that'll tell us whether it would even make sense at all of doing a 4th well at that site. But that's the initiative. On the funding side, Monterey One Water believes they have a verbal commitment to reopen the loan so that there will be money available to do that, which means our budgeted $3 million may not come into play. Or if we decide to do both wells, then it certainly would come into play because the reopening of the loan would not have enough money in it for 2 wells, 2 new wells. So there's progress being made. It's all kind of, I think the conditioning of the well The second well will probably fall into September because they're going to be done sequentially. But it's all happening, and that'll help. With respect to California American, we did notify them of what's called the performance start date of September 1st. They needed sufficient time to give notice to their customers that a cost of water, purchase cost of water surcharge would appear on their bills. And so the billing period that we elected would be basically the September billing period. They should be able to get that notice out this week, hopefully, to give their customers the 30-day notice. The other issue is what we call there's a Tier 2 advice letter that must be filed on the initial cost of water, and that has not been filed yet. We're hopeful that it gets done soon, so that the soft cap under the water purchase agreement, or $1,720 per acre foot, is immediately implemented. Monterey One Water's been just a little slow in getting the right financial data in so that we can have the actual set company rate for this fiscal year, which is $2,442 per acre foot. And that is a Tier 1 advice letter that we need filed as soon as possible, or we, the district, will be buying water from Monterey One Water at $2,442 an acre foot and selling it to Cal-Am at $1,720 an acre foot, which is not a long-term sensible business transaction. There are mechanisms for truing up the total costs in a subsequent fiscal year. Because this is a partial year, the first year requirement will not be 3,500 acre feet, but it will be something less. And because of the injection capacity issues, this is our one time for the partial year to agree with the company on a different company allotment for the first partial year. And so we will, and that's a 3-party agreement. So the notification of performance start date was district to company, which we did. The other than 3,500 company allotment is a 3-party written agreement. And so Monterey One Water and ourselves will send a proposal on or about August 18th as to what that number should be based on our understanding of the effect of the conditioning of these wells and the schedule for getting the shallow wells back online. So that'll give us a kind of a high and low of how much water could get injected into the ground through June 30th of this current fiscal year. And so that will be the number that we would put in for the company allotment. If we ended up a little bit short in order to meet our contractual obligation reach, we'd pull a little bit out of the operating reserve. But if we came in way short, we don't want to pull so much out of the operating reserve that we're not in a good position to refill the operating reserve in the subsequent year. So there's a little dance going on with what we believe the well injection capacity is or will be following these activities that we're doing right now. And then what the schedule for the deep well number 3 becomes will inform us whether we are going to be stuck at a risky under 3,500 acre foot position in the next fiscal year. And I think we can make that up if we deliver a new well early in the next fiscal year. So there's a whole lot of what ifs going on, but that's the stated problem is we don't have enough injection capacity to meet the 3,500 acre feet. We're fixing it.
Is there is your understanding of Monterey One decision to go forward, is that an option that includes the potential for 2 wells, or is it 1 well now and then we'll think about it later?
They were just contemplating whether to change the design specs to go ahead and design 2 wells right now, which would then give you the ability to be done with that effort and then make the decision to do just 1 or both at the same time. If we only designed 1 and have to come back and design again, weeks and weeks are lost. So I can't tell you exactly where we came down on that. And unless John knows, we'll have to get back to you at the next meeting.
Well,
we're waiting for the results of the boreholes to see how feasible one looks and to make that decision.
Okay, yep. We have a
Thank you.
standing Wednesday meeting every Wednesday on all of these issues. So each week we learn a little bit more. I don't think the borings will be done to indicate what that would be at this week's meeting, but certainly by next week.
This is a three-party meeting?
Oh, it's, yeah, California American, Monterey One. Well, no, let me back up. We have standing meetings with the three parties, which are monthly, but we've actually done them about every other week so far. And then we have a standing meeting with the project team, which is just Monterey One Water and ourselves every Wednesday.
Okay, well, there's a difference, but I get it. Any other committee questions? I still go to the public. Why don't I go out to the public and see if there are any comments on this?
If you do have a comment, please use the raised hand icon or press *9 on your phone.
It looks like no raised.
O'Reilly, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Bring it back to the committee. Any other comments or questions or,
Yes, I do.
okay, Molly, go ahead.
Thank you. Have we finished injecting our reserve yet?
No, it'll be the date that we've kind of centered in on is by August 31st.
Oh, okay.
The actual math says we could probably do it by August 20th. Originally, when I say originally, there is no original anymore, but we had said August 10th. There's what's called the delivery start date and the performance start date. And the delivery start date was the date upon which injection would begin. And that's the one that got delayed due to the construction issues and the contractor issues. The performance start date can happen no later than 6 months from the delivery start date. And so the delivery start date was March 13th. The performance start date to remain somewhat consistent and not in breach would be September 13th.
Mm-hmm.
We had said, I think we picked August 10th, August 13th, and August 20th. But really for us, it's just something before September 13th so that we're within that 6 month period. Now, that being said, the calendar date for delivery start date was supposed to be no later than July 1st of 2019, which means the performance start date should have been no later than January 1st. So while we are within the 6 months, we've already missed the January 1st because of the first delay. But so we're just trying to, you know, we picked September 1st because that gave CalAm the notice period for the next billing cycle so they could inform their customers. But it should be sometime here. The problem, of course, is when do you shut a well down to begin swabbing will have an impact. We asked them to at least try to find a minimum amount that they could put into the Veda zone wells, but no one wants to go over, I think, 10 gallons per minute, and the meters don't even kick in at anything less than 15 gallons a minute. And so it's almost not really worth it. So, you know, it all just depends on when you take a well offline and put other wells back online. But everyone's highly confident that before the end of August, we were at 8:55, I believe, last Thursday, meaning we needed another 145 acre feet.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything more on that subject, Mary? You okay? Thank you. I just want to this is a PS, but as I flip through the permit process from the previous item on their agenda, I was just amazed at how many steps in that process there were. I just want to comment that not only is it slow and it's very thorough, but it's also all sorts of places where it can slow down. So I'm just impressed, that's all. Okay, the next item is discussion of the Carmel River Sigma issue. So Dave?
Yeah, and John, your sound isn't perfect today, so I guess I'll take this, but you can step in and correct me at some point. So the DWR, so that's Department of Water Resources, they were tasked with implementing Sigma, but the State Water Board was tasked with enforcement of Sigma. And so the Department of Water Resources person contacted John and said, hey, when are you going to get your groundwater sustainability plan in? Because, you know, you're a priority basin under our Bulletin 118. And John kind of thought to himself, well, I thought we'd already agreed we don't have to do a groundwater sustainability plan because it's not groundwater. And so we decided to get everybody in a room, and we got two folks from DWR and the enforcement person at State Water Board to agree that it's the State Water Board. So they can put us on probation if we haven't filed a GSP, groundwater sustainability plan. And what DWR will do at some point after the filing deadline is send a list of all the basins that they felt should have a GSP who are non-compliant. And then the state has to decide if they're going to step in, enforce, or do what. The state, okay, they're both the state, so let me try to use my terminology correctly. The State Water Board has agreed with a previous letter that we sent, and Department of Water Resources also agreed with that previous letter that was sent to us, that because our water is technically not groundwater and doesn't meet the requirements of that which needs to be regulated under Sigma, that there will be no enforcement. We raised two issues. One is, will we get on a list, a probationary list, because of the stigma would not be something we would want. And they assured us that that was a discretionary action by the State Water Board, not DWR, and the State Water Board would not do that. The second, and this is a really insightful thing that John Lear asked, is, but wait a minute, if we go on some list at DWR as quote unquote non-compliant, will that affect our access to any grant funds? And they're supposed to go back in and look at that. So if there is a problem, then what we would do is develop a cursory groundwater sustainability plan that in effect says this is not groundwater and therefore does not need a plan. Submit it as a plan and hope it gets accepted so that we don't go on a list that would prevent us from grant funding somewhere down the line. But they haven't gotten back to us on that potential issue. On the other issue of just being put on probation, we did get the answer we're looking for there. And that was the intent all along. We were the 18th individual entity to get approval to be the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So we were on this thing from the very beginning, even though we knew in our little heart of hearts that there was going to be a little problem because it's not groundwater. That's how the state got their hooks into regulating it as surface water. And that's where Order 9510 came from and the CDO and everything else. So we then chased the state for a little over 2 years to get that letter from them. And then we just had to do a little more chasing here to have this phone call so that they would reaffirm what was in that letter, that we don't have any requirement to be regulated under Sigma. So just a FYI type of information item.
Well, my compliments to John for raising that question. When I saw that sentence in the report, I thought, wow, I'll put a star behind it about the grant funds. And my other question in general was, at what point does any of this get in writing? Because it's one thing to have memories. And as I understand from just the consultant work we do with Los Padres Dam, a staff changes, then the whole series of questions change, and then you got to go back over the same ground you covered once before or twice before. And I'd hate to have this happen here too. So,
Yeah, so the State Water Board letter is in our district files, correspondence files. It's in our general counsel's files. It's not attached to this staff note, but it was attached to another staff note. So it's in the permanent record of the district. This discussion, I asked John to do a memo to file on the phone conversation. So you're right, with the changing personnel and so forth, it may be that it gets lost, but the discussion as put in the staff note, it will at least be in the district's permanent record. But you raise a good question. Will anyone know where to go find it?
well, maybe send a copy of the staff note to the two state offices, and just saying, this is what we're putting in our file. And if we got anything wrong here, let us know. And just put the ball there in case there's some reason why we may have to call attention to it.
That's a good idea. Some form of correspondence. I think once we hear back from DWR on the funding issue, then we can memorialize what our understanding is.
Any other questions from the committee? Let's go out to the public. Let's go to the public, please, Arlene.
Yes. I see no raised hands.
Okay.
I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Bring it back to the committee. Let's move on to the update on ASR. By the way, committee members, if you feel like there's a question you still have, I'm still wide open if you want to go back an agenda item and so on, because this is all discussion and we need to be clear on whatever it is that occurs to you. So I just want to comment that way. Okay, Dave, again on ASR.
Yeah, this I'm going to turn over to John if you have anything to update. Otherwise, I was on the site, I don't know, sometime last week, and they're making progress, but it's still just a construction site. John, do you have anything you can add?
Well, the phase that we're in right now is finishing up all of the internal piping and the tanks and the injectors that will inject the chemical. We are installing the doors on the building right now, and at that point in time, we're starting to, we will signal the CalAm that they can enter and put in their PLC and controlling computer software systems and link it back to their master control room. So that point is going to happen here in the next couple weeks, and we'll move on to that phase.
Okay, good to hear. Progress. Anything more from any committee member?
I'm just kind of curious about how much do you think that we've invested in the ASR project?
Total?
Yeah, just over the years.
That's a great question. I've done that work and I know I have it somewhere, but I really can't grab it.
20 million ballpark?
I would guess around less, if you count the new building, I would say around 15 or 16 would be my guess.
Yeah, I just didn't know where at all it was. So I appreciate just getting a pretty good guess. That's great. Good.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Let's move on to the information item on the award. Sounds good.
Yeah, well, we just wanted to make sure you knew that we got 2.3 million granted to our planning group. So it's not just to the district. Most of this money, I believe, is targeted for other entities, but we serve as the mother hen on bringing these folks all together and doing the solicitation and getting the package in. It's not an enjoyable process to manage. I can tell you, Larry didn't like it and Maureen doesn't like it, but we've been getting some money out of it. So we'll keep doing it. But yeah, this is just to let you know that we did receive an award.
If I may ask, what projects were we, the district, going to do with this grant money?
I knew you were going to ask that.
I know you have the answer ready.
I had it on a document sitting on my desktop that's not on my desktop. John, do you know off the top of your head?
No, I know we were considering trying to get some funding for the treatment, but that did not qualify as, it did not check all the correct boxes. So it was, our treatment building was not available to receive funding.
Yeah, so just so you recall, we had a little issue with what were called compliance obligations or something like that. And so the two highest ranking projects were related to ASR and DCEL, I believe. And both of those were deemed to be projects to meet compliance with the CDO and therefore ineligible, which was very unfortunate. Since that time, they removed that nature and said, oh, well, you can reapply, but it was kind of too late. So I think we ended up with things that are related to some stormwater for the city of Monterey and others, but I can get you that offline and I'll send you an email. I'll send the whole committee an email.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And that is it.
See if they're appropriate. One is, and I can do this offline a little bit because at least in the one question, the question came up with at the last board meeting about the potential of the permit 21-330. And if that access, the water that's accessible in the Carmel River from that permit could, and now it has geographical restrictions on it, and I'm not sure what the definitions of call it, but there are some restrictions on how it's used. If that could be considered an option going forward about not just the source of water, but a flexible use of that water, which makes the whole system more manageable, I think. Makes it easier for Cal-Am, makes it easier for the district, if that happens. I'm just curious about having a discussion around that subject. That's point number one.
Yep.
Point number two is, and this was kind of my little, I got myself into the trap, I think, but I don't know if it's a trap, a lack of information or something, but I was interested in how the Cal-Am's project for that bypass, I was mainly interested in the December to May ASR schedule. And as I was asking questions about the transition between water rates, water flow from ASR compared to water flows from another source and conflicting in the pipe. And I had in my mind that it existed in December and that it existed in May. And some of the discussion said the last 3 months of the ASR is all affected by this. And I just didn't understand that. And I just want to find out more about that. Why the last 3 months? I just didn't understand it. And I'm willing to go offline. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, I know John did the number of days it would be lost if it was a 4-month injection season or a 3-month.
Dave,
yeah.
This is not on the agenda, so I think he's asking either for you to contact him offline or for us to put it on a future agenda.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So he's done some analysis, but we'd have to put that together as a staff note. But yeah, we can look into the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Any other ideas, questions from the rest of the committee? Okay.
I had made a suggestion a few months back, and I was just wondering when that might appear on the agenda.
What was that?
I had made a suggestion for a future agenda a few months ago, and I was wondering when that may appear.
I don't know. What was the suggestion?
Revisiting the arrangement with Monterey One Water regarding Pure Water Monterey.
Oh, well, we did start that. I thought we had a discussion at our last meeting. I don't want to say they laughed in my face, but they
Yeah, I
suggested
don't
that,
need an update. I just wanted to
Yeah.
know. when
yeah,
it-
okay, we'll
come
bring
back.
it back, but yeah, shortly after that request was made, simultaneously, one of their representatives contacted me and said, what was that all about? And I had already contacted Paul Shudo about it, and then we kind of brought it together and talked about it, and
Dave, it's not on the agenda.
yeah, Dave, you got a cocktail you're waiting on, or what? So anyway, yeah, I think we felt that we addressed it, but we'll bring it back formally.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, staff. We're at the end of the meeting. Unless I hear anything from
Hold on
anybody,
one sec. Okay.
this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Enjoy your cocktail. I will.